117th lesson. A slight misunderstanding.
Fortunately, there was a can of petrol in the boot. David put that into the tank and they drove on to a service station.
"Fill her up," said David. "And you'd better check the oil."
"Why don't we go and have a cup of coffee?" said Joan.
"OK, fine. When he's finished, I'll join you."
Joan got out of the car and walked towards the cafeteria.
She stopped at a kiosk to buy a magazine and then went into the cafe and bought 2 coffees.
David arrived 5 minutes later and sat down.
"I'm sorry, love. I should have listened to you. You said we'd forgotten something and you were right."
"Yes, it's silly to run out of petrol on the motorway. You ought to have checked before."
"All right. I said I was sorry, didn't I? Let's finish our coffee and leave."
They got back into the car and continued their journey in silence.
Joan read her magazine, and an hour later they arrived in Oxford.
A 118th lesson at the Wilsons.
Oxford looked very beautiful that morning. It's not for nothing that it's called the City of Spires.
They drove through the centre and soon arrived at the quiet street where David's parents lived.
David's father greeted them at the door. "Hello, you look well. Come in. Did you have a good trip?"
David and Joan looked at one another uncomfortably.
Yes, thanks. It was all right."
"Put your bags down there and come into the front room."
David's mother was sitting in front of the fire.
She stood up as they came in and kissed them both.
Joan took a parcel from behind her back and gave it to Mrs. Wilson.
"It's just a little something I found in an antique shop."
Mrs. Wilson opened the parcel and took out a small silver box.
"Oh, it's lovely," she cried. "But what is it?"
"Well, it's Victorian. It's a thing."
"Oh, good. You don't know either. I can't offend you, can I? I think I'll put my earrings in it." "119th lesson. Revision and notes. No recording for this lesson."
"120th lesson. Some traditions."
It is often said that the English are conservative.
I prefer to hear it said that they are traditionalist.
There are many traditions and customs in Britain, and some may appear strange to foreigners.
For example, on October the 31st, one can see children making masks from pumpkins and putting candles inside to frighten witches.
This is called Halloween and is the day before All Saints' Day.
Just before Easter, on Good Friday, you can buy hot cross buns.
These are delicious spicy cakes with a cross on them to remind us of the crucifixion.
The day after Christmas is called Boxing Day.
This is because householders used to give little presents or boxes to the tradesmen who had served them.
Nowadays, it is usual to give money.
Perhaps the most spectacular tradition is Bonfire Night or Guy Fawkes Night.
This takes place on the 5th of November and celebrates the arrest in 1605 of Guy Fawkes, who attempted to blow up the Houses of Parliament.
Today, people celebrate by lighting bonfires, setting off fireworks, and burning effigies called guys.
(121st lesson). Some more traditions.
If you go to the Tower of London, you will see 6 ravens.
These birds, or rather their ancestors, have been there since the 11th century.
But today, they are there for a very important reason.
According to tradition, the British Empire will remain only as long as there are ravens in the tower.
No one knows the reason for this legend, but there are many suggestions.
One is that a gang of thieves broke into the tower while the sentries were asleep. But the ravens made so much noise that the sentries woke up and were able to kill the thieves.
Whatever the reason, the birds are fed every day and receive a state pension.
Scotland and Ireland, too, are full of legend and tradition.
In Scotland, Christmas is not a big feast. For the Scots, New Year's Day is more important.
This is called Hogmanay. At midnight, a tall, dark man must cross the threshold of your house, carrying a lump of coal, a piece of bread, and a bottle of whiskey.
These items symbolize warmth, food, and drink for the coming year.
(122nd lesson). Meeting a client at the airport.
David was waiting near the arrival lounge at Heathrow's Terminal 1.
He was waiting for a client who was coming from Geneva.
The loudspeaker crackled, and he heard a voice say,
British Airways announced the arrival of Flight 107 from Geneva.
David started looking for his client. He knew that the man would be wearing a carnation in his buttonhole and carrying a copy of the Sunday Times under his arm.
He caught sight of the man, who was tall and grey-haired with long sideboards.
He went forward and said, "You must be Mr. Lagarde. I'm David Wilson. How do you do?"
They shook hands. David picked up the man's case and said,
"Follow me, will you? My car is in the car park. It's just outside."
When they were driving towards London, David said,
"I'll take you to your hotel first, then we'll get some lunch."
Mr. Lagarde replied, "Thank you. I'm staying at the Churchill. My secretary booked the room by telex."
At the hotel, the doorman took Mr. Lagarde's case and another servant parked the car.
The two men went to the reception desk. "My name's Lagarde. I have a single room reserved."
"Yes, sir. Room 237. The hall porter will show you up."
(123rd lesson). How is your English getting on?
Have you noticed that every day you are learning new words and expressions?
You can now hold conversations, read notices, ask your way, even argue with someone.
We must continue to add new material every day, so that, at the end of the course, you will be able to understand English as it is spoken by the English.
We hope that you find time to revise the past lessons, and that, above all, you do it aloud.
This is vital because it helps you to remember and to improve your pronunciation.
You will always have a slight accent, but don't worry. People will be able to understand you, which is most important.
And besides, a slight foreign accent is charming.
There are certain expressions which you cannot really translate, so you can say them in your own language, and people will say, "How charming."
So revise and read aloud every day as much as you can.
you will find that your English is becoming more and more natural.
(124th lesson). A little revision.
In order to help you with your task of revision, today and tomorrow, we will look again at some of the words we have seen recently, together with a few new ones.
This sentence may appear difficult to you, but actually it is simple.
From the top of the post office tower, you can see the whole of London.
Indian cooking is delicious, but it can be very spicy.
I bought this overcoat second-hand. Does it suit me?
So long as you warn me first, you can take the lawnmower when you like.
On November the 5th, people set off fireworks, light bonfires, and burn guys.
Although he's very intelligent, he won't pass the exam. He hasn't worked.
My car is parked just outside the cinema. I have a room reserved in the name of Wilson.
Whatever he wants, tell him to go away. I'm far too busy.
Inside the tower, ravens could be seen eating from silver bowls.
Would you mind waiting for 10 minutes? Mr. Wilson is not back yet.
(125th lesson). A little revision.
According to my dictionary, this word means carefree.
During the night, a burglar broke into the castle and stole all her jewels.
You erase it with a rubber, not a robber, you silly thing.
The advertisement says that if you pour milk onto this cereal, it will crackle.
He bought 2 second-hand loudspeakers for his stereo, but they didn't work. It was a bad bargain.
There is a button missing from this jacket. Or else, I've got an extra buttonhole.
I have no change for the cigarette machine. Lend me 50p, will you?
You ought to stop smoking. It's bad for your health.
Your health, said the barman.
Cheers, said the customer.
Let me introduce you to Mr. Lagarde. He has just arrived from Geneva.
He seems a pleasant man. What does he do?
He's a dentist.
Then I was wrong. He's an unpleasant man.
You will speak English more and more fluently if you revise a little every day.
(126th lesson). Revision and notes. No recording for this lesson.